So when you think about the kingdom, you think about the people of the kingdom, and collectively we call the people of the kingdom the church. So the first thing that you think about, or I think about, when I think about a group of people, I think, well, who's in charge? So I'd like to ask you that question. Who is in charge of the church? I mean, it's a pretty simple question. And just take a minute and think about that. Who's in charge? So maybe some of you have said, well, the pastors are in charge of the church. And I would like to point out to you that that has actually been a common thought through different eras. And there was a time when it was very formalized that the pastors were in charge. They didn't call them pastors, though. They called them priests. The priests were in charge, and there is a head priest, and that's called the Pope. And that's how the church was administrated, through the authority of these people who are in charge. But here's the interesting thing. I don't know if you've heard about this incredible man, Martin Luther, but what he did was he challenged that whole structure. He said, no, who's in charge is Jesus, and who people report to is Jesus. Now, that doesn't mean to say that people might not have organizations and fellowships and ministries and all different kinds of things that they are responsible for, but their responsibility for that organization does not extend to them being personally between that member of the organization and God. They are not the priests. We are the priesthood of all believers. So let me tell you how I've seen this go off track, because why? Pastors don't understand what this really means. They don't understand. Now, I'm going to use a word and I'm going to define it, but it's really important that we use the proper terminology if we're working on some technical definitions of why things are not working and what needs to happen so that they work properly. We need to understand some technical definitions, and one is jurisdiction. Jurisdiction means the area of authority. So because some pastors do not understand their area of authority, they actually exercise authority in areas that they don't have authority. And let me give you an example. I had friends who were new believers, and they wanted to start a Bible study in their neighborhood. They thought it would be a great way to reach their neighbors for Christ. So they talked to their pastor about it. Well, guess what? Their pastor said, no, you are new believers and you are not qualified to have a Bible study. And so, no, you cannot start a Bible study in your neighborhood. Well, they disagreed with that. They left the church. I think they went ahead and started that Bible study. And they left the church feeling like that pastor was very controlling. But in my opinion, the pastor was not very controlling so much as he had the wrong understanding of jurisdiction. He had the wrong understanding of his scope of authority. And so let's unpack that. The pastor is responsible for the church and the ministries that serve the members of the church, because that's his jurisdiction. The pastor and the church leaders, that's their jurisdiction. However, this Bible study was not part of the church, wasn't for the members of the church. It was their personal ministry that they felt called to by God to do in their own personal neighborhood. So what happened was the pastor inserted himself between them and God and said, we're going to tell you what to do. And it didn't go so well. They lost a really good member, a family that was a member of their church, because the pastor did not understand jurisdiction. The other thing the pastor did not understand is how people grow in the kingdom. They grow when you give them responsibility. Now, we come from an educational paradigm. In other words, we feel like you have to educate people into doing activities. Well, Jesus didn't do that. He sent people out to do activities, and then they came back often with all kinds of questions like, why didn't this work, and what happened there, and what happened. And that's the same way we should be training up people now, because look at it in the natural. That will give you a great understanding of how it works. When we have children, one, they don't come with a handbook, or two, God doesn't wait until we have a college degree in child rearing before he gives us children. Often he gives us children when we're young, we're immature, we don't really know exactly which way is up. And as we take responsibility for these children, we have questions. Those questions cause us to grow as we get the answers, and we are driven to get answers because the need drives us. So this is how people grow. So if the pastor had wanted to serve this couple according to the kingdom model, could have said, that's a great idea to start a Bible study in your neighborhood, and I will help mentor you, or I will ask somebody who has started Bible studies before to mentor you. I hope you can hear me over top of that horn. I will have someone who has started Bible studies before to help mentor you and help you to understand what you might encounter, or if you have questions, you have someone to go to talk to. And that way the kingdom would have expanded, their neighborhood would have been positively impacted for Christ. And as they saw fruit from their ministry, they could bring them back to a church that empowers people. But unfortunately, it didn't work that way because the pastor did not understand jurisdiction and administration. The pastor thought he was in charge of the people, but really, he is in charge of the organization. And when you feel like you're in charge of the people, that you are somehow between them and God, Martin Luther, he said it straight for us a long time ago. We are the priesthood of all believers. In other words, I am a priest as someone who can go directly to God. I am the person who hears from God. You don't hear from God from me. God speaks to me, and then it's your job to either support me in what God says or help me to find the resource who will. It's not your job to be my Holy Spirit and my God. Now, this is qualified when it comes to how things are done in the church. If you say as the pastor church leader, we're having communion this Sunday, that is your arena to exercise your authority, and you're perfectly entitled to do that. As a matter of fact, if you don't do that, you'll have disorder and disarray, and your church simply, your fellowship simply will not work very well. So who's in charge? It's a big fundamental question. People don't understand. They don't understand, and when they don't understand, this is an administrative problem. Things don't work properly, but hopefully we've shed a little bit of light on that.